All right, let's dive right in today. We're going deep on a pretty big story coming out of South Africa.
Yeah?
Former President Jacob Zuma,
Mm.
he wants back in the ANC, wants to be reinstated.
Yep.
And you guys sent in some really fascinating articles, one from ENCA and another from the Mail and Guardian.
Yeah. Should be interesting to unpack those a little bit.
So let's get into it. I mean, this
And
this feels like something that could really shake things up in South African politics.
Yeah, it really does.
So for anyone who maybe hasn't been following all the ins and outs of this whole saga, let's start with the basics here. So Zuma, he was expelled from the ANC back in 2023.
Right.
And the reason they gave was that he joined another the MK party,
Yeah.
and even became their leader.
Right.
So what was it about this move that made the ANC react so strongly? Like, why was this such a big deal?
Well, the ANC's constitution, it specifically forbids members from joining other rival parties.
Right.
And they see it as a really direct threat to their unity. Like, they're really worried about factionalism.
Okay.
Where you get these smaller groups within the party, they're kind of, vying for power and influence.
Right.
And it's something that the ANC, they've been dealing with this for years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so Zuma's move was seen as like a major escalation of that whole problem.
Okay, so it wasn't just that he left.
Right.
It was that he went and basically set up shop across the street.
Exactly.
And it sounds like, this factionalism, this idea of this party kind of fracturing it, had some really concrete consequences for the ANC.
Yeah.
They ended up losing their parliamentary majority in 2024.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, that's a huge shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
and Zuma going to the MK party, that definitely played a part in the ANC's, decline in the election.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to figure it probably pulled away some of their support, especially among people who were, sympathetic to Zuma's faction.
Right, right.
And, with them losing that majority, that really weakens their grip on governing.
Right.
And it's, South Africa is being pushed toward a more, a multi-party system.
So, it really wasn't just a symbolic thing that Zuma left. It had real-world consequences.
It did. It did.
And now he wants back in.
He does.
I mean, how bold is that?
That is bold.
He's even threatened to take them to court if they don't reinstate him by January 31st of next year. So what are his grounds for this? Like, what's he basing his demand on?
Well, he's saying that his expulsion was unlawful.
Okay.
And he has a few reasons that he's citing. He claims that he was denied a physical hearing.
Okay.
So, in a sense, the process wasn't transparent.
Right.
He's saying, hey, this wasn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also alleges that Fikile Mbalula, the ANC Secretary General, interfered with the process.
Right.
And that his representative was, quote, victimized, end quote. So, that adds, get another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
Yeah, and that demand for a physical hearing that really stands out to me.
It does. It's an interesting one.
Is that standard procedure for the ANC, or is Zuma, is he trying to make a bigger point here?
Yeah, it's not really clear if a physical hearing is, typically required in these types of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But the demand itself, I mean, it could be a strategic move on Zuma's part.
Okay.
I mean, you could see it as him setting the stage to defend himself publicly, maybe even rally some support from his base.
Right.
And put pressure on the ANC leadership.
Mm-hmm.
He's not exactly, shy about using the public, platform to his advantage.
Well, we all remember how he used the public platform during his presidency.
Right.
But hasn't that backfired on him before, though?
Yeah.
Especially during those corruption scandals? Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm wondering if him seeking this public forum now, if that might actually hurt his chances more than it helps.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I mean, while a public platform, it can be a powerful tool, it can also backfire.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with someone as controversial as Zuma.
Right.
It's really hard to say if this will help or hurt him in the end.
So we've got, Zuma wanting this kind of public showdown.
Right.
He's throwing out these accusations of interference, of victimization. It's not just about the rules anymore.
Right.
This is getting personal.
Yep.
So what specifically is he claiming about Mbalula?
Well, he's basically saying that Mbulula had too much influence over this expulsion process.
Okay.
And it does raise questions about whether or not things were actually fair.
Right.
I mean, was this impartial?
Right.
And it feeds into this larger narrative that some people are putting forward.
Yeah.
That maybe there are some personal vendettas going on within the ANC.
Maybe there are these internal power struggles that are at play here.
That makes me think of something else I read in the articles. Zuma was saying that other ANC members have joined different parties.
Right.
And they weren't expelled.
Yeah, that's right.
So it makes you wonder, is there some kind of inconsistency in how the ANC applies its rules?
Yeah, you've hit on a key point there.
Okay.
This perceived inconsistency, I mean, it's really fueling these accusations of bias.
Right.
And, selective enforcement.
Right.
Zuma's supporters, they're saying he was unfairly targeted.
Mm-hmm.
While his critics say, no, his case is different.
Okay.
He was the president.
Right.
He did things that other people haven't done.
So this is getting really complicated.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But it's fascinating
Absolutely.
just to see how all these threads are kind of coming together.
Yep.
It's clear that this goes way beyond just breaking some rule.
Yeah.
We're talking about power. We're talking about potential bias. We're talking about maybe a very public showdown.
Right.
And it's not just within the ANC.
Right.
The MK party, Zuma's new party, they've been pretty vocal throughout all this.
Oh, yeah.
They really have.
You've come out swinging,
Yeah, it seems like they're not just defending Zuma. They're kind of using this as an opportunity to go after the ANC as a whole.
That's right.
Like their spokesperson, Mzwan Elimani, he put out a statement, right? He said that Zuma's rights were violated and that Mbulula is basically, on this vendetta. And even going after anyone who's trying to help Zuma, it just seems really, really aggressive.
It is.
So what do you make of that?
Well, the MK party's statement, it's pointed. I mean, they're claiming, that there's a pattern of persecution here.
Okay.
Against Zuma, against his allies.
Mm-hmm.
And they're essentially saying that Mbulula is, using his position to go after people he doesn't like,
right.
To silence anyone who disagrees with him within the party.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty serious accusation.
So it's not just about Zuma anymore. It's
Right.
about like a broader pattern of behavior.
That's what they're saying.
Are they saying that the ANC has become intolerant to other opinions?
That seems to be the implication.
Yeah, that they're, stifling debate within the party.
Yeah, that's the picture they're painting.
Okay.
They're saying the ANC is moving away from, what it used to stand for,
Yeah.
being inclusive, encouraging debate,
Mm.
and that it's becoming more, authoritarian, less tolerant of dissent,
Right.
and that those in power, they're abusing their power.
And if that's true, that would be a huge change from, how the ANC has always presented itself.
Right.
Like this party that champions, democracy and dialogue.
Exactly.
It makes me think, it's South Africa. But are we seeing these themes, this factionalism, these power struggles, this silencing of dissent? Are these things happening in other countries?
Absolutely.
All around the world?
Yeah. I mean, the challenges that the ANC is facing, they're not, unique to South Africa. I mean, a lot of political parties around the world, they're dealing with these internal divisions, these accusations of corruption.
Right.
Just the difficulty of staying unified when the world is changing so rapidly.
Right.
What's happening with the ANC, in a lot of ways, it reflects kind of these global trends.
So it's almost like a case study in what's happening all over.
In a way, yeah.
So we've got the ANC's official position. We've got Zuma pushing back.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this really strong defense from the MK party.
Mm-hmm.
But what about regular people in South Africa?
Right.
What are they saying about all this?
Well, public opinion, it seems pretty divided,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't really surprising considering, how polarizing Zuma is.
Right.
The Mail and Guardian article we were talking about, it had some comments from readers,
Mm-hmm.
and you can really see the range of opinions there. Some people, they totally support Zuma.
Okay.
They think he's been treated unfairly,
Mm-hmm.
that he deserves to be back in.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, though, they see him as corrupt,
Right.
and they just want him to go away.
Yeah, and that's something that really stuck out to me when I was reading these articles.
Yeah.
Just how strongly people feel about this whole thing,
Absolutely.
both for and against Zuma.
Yeah.
It really shows how deeply this is affecting people.
It does.
This isn't just some abstract political thing.
Right. It hits home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think's going on there?
Well, it's tapping into some long-standing divisions.
Okay.
Political, cultural, in South African society. It brings up, all these strong emotions, these historical grievances. People just have different ideas about what they want the future of their country to look like.
So really, this whole thing is about so much more than whether or not Zuma gets back into the ANC.
Exactly.
It's about how the party is perceived.
Mm-hmm.
It's about their internal conflicts, and it's about whether or not they can actually govern a country with such a a difficult and complex history. So what do you think could happen here? Like, play it out for us.
Okay.
What are the possible outcomes?
Sure.
And what do they mean for the ANC and for South Africa as a whole?
Well, there are a lot of potential outcomes.
Right.
And each one has some pretty big implications. So let's say the ANC, they just ignore Zuma's demands.
Okay.
And he goes ahead and takes them to court.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that could turn into a really messy legal battle.
Mm-hmm.
And that could, really hurt the ANC.
Okay.
They're already dealing with this loss of trust from the public.
Right.
Their support is declining.
Right.
This would just make all those problems worse.
Right.
It would just, keep those divisions in the public eye.
Right.
And it could really weaken them going into the next election in 2029.
And what if they just say, okay, Zuma, you're back in?
Right.
Would that actually work?
Well, it would definitely make his supporters happy.
Right.
Maybe it would help bring the party back together a little bit.
Okay.
But on the other hand, there are a lot of people who see Zuma as corrupt.
Right.
And letting him back in, it could really damage the ANC's reputation.
Right.
Especially with those voters who care about, ethics and accountability.
Right.
So it's a tricky situation.
It's like whatever they do, there are going to be consequences.
Exactly. It's a real dilemma.
So we've covered a lot here.
We have.
From Zuma's expulsion to the MK party, making these accusations to the public being divided.
Right.
And it just seems like there's no easy answer here.
No, not at all.
What strikes me is how this one case really kind of sums up a lot of the challenges that South Africa is facing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see the legacy of apartheid. You see this struggle for economic equality. You see the fight against corruption. You see a democracy trying to, evolve and grow. It's all kind of wrapped up in this one story.
Yeah, it's like this one event is showing us all the hopes and struggles of South Africa.
Yeah.
And it's all coming to a head with this deadline on January 31st.
Right.
If Zuma doesn't get reinstated, he's going to take the ANC to court.
Yep.
So what could that actually mean for the party?
Right.
Could this be the final straw?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, a legal battle, that would be a huge distraction for the ANC.
Yeah.
They're already dealing with this loss of public trust.
Right.
Their support is declining. And this court case, it'd be in the public eye. And that would just make all those problems worse.
Right. Yeah.
And who knows what'll happen internally.
Right.
You could have different factions within the ANC taking sides. It could create even more division.
This is starting to feel like a political thriller.
Right.
It's like huge stakes.
Absolutely.
It's almost Shakespearean.
Yeah.
This once powerful leader, now he's been exiled and he's trying to get back in.
Right.
And the outcome could affect, the whole nation.
It could.
So as this is unfolding, what are you going to be paying attention to? What are the signs that things are going one way or the other?
Well, I'm going to be looking at how the ANC handles the pressure.
Okay.
Will they try to make a deal with Zuma? Will they try to keep his supporters happy? Or are they going to stick to their guns?
Right.
However they respond, it'll tell us a lot about, what's happening within the party, what their priorities are,
Right.
what they see for the future. And then, of course, I'll be watching public opinion.
Okay.
Are people going to support Zuma? Or is this going to make them turn away from the ANC even more?
You've given us so much to think about here.
Well, it's a fascinating case.
And I really feel like we're just at the beginning of this story.
Oh, yeah.
So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
is there one question that you would want our listeners to really ask themselves as they're, watching this unfold?
I think the big question is, what does this say about South African democracy? Is this a sign of strength that they can, overcome these challenges? Or is it a sign that there are some deeper problems? This whole thing, no matter what happens, it could really reshape South African politics. And it reminds us that, trying to build a fair and just society, that's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
And it's not always clear what the best path forward is.
That's a really powerful thought.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, keep your eyes on this. Read everything you can. Make up your own mind.
Absolutely.
This is a big moment for South Africa.
It is.
And it's important that we're all paying attention.
Yep.
Until next time, keep diving deep.